Alright, so as we've already covered, unfortunately my FYE truck came broken right out of the box. The axle snapped, probably during shipping. It is what it is. I did try foolishly to fix it with some kind of adhesive, but you know, I don't got to tell you guys that ain't gonna work. So I do have another middle axle coming from Banggood, and we'll get that replaced for how I'm going to lock or pseudo lock the diffs. But one of the other problems with this truck is that the tires are super squishy, like so squishy. That's like most of the suspension is smushy tires. So I did have this thing out in my backyard earlier today, and my grass is a little on the long side, but as soon as I came up against something, the inherent problem with open diffs, you know, it just couldn't make it. And then with having squishy tires, yeah, that's a problem. Then another problem too is that these things just fly right off. So we're definitely gonna have to find a way to adhere that, probably maybe with some kind of super glue or CA compound. I haven't made up my mind which I want to do yet, but to combat this squishiness, I saw a few videos on this, so I'm just sharing what other people have already done. I'm hoping you find my video just as informative. I will definitely provide links down below to those that contributed to the ideas that I had for this truck. So basically what I'm going to do, guys, is I just have foam. This is just foam that you get to wedge in the spaces of air conditioners between the air conditioner and your windows. So I'm just basically going to measure, number one, how deep I need the foam to be, and it's foam, so I can really cram it in there to make this nice and rigid as it needs to be. But I'm also going to measure lengthwise how much foam I'm going to need. Do this maybe a quarter turn at a time. So it landed at just past the 5. It's about 5 1/4 inches. So I'm going to need 5 1/4 inches of material to fill this void. Now this looks like this might be a good width. It might even be a good depth. I can just shove this in here. It would be a lot easier if it were large, actually two size. You know, that might actually provide some bounce back. So this is already cut to the appropriate density or thickness I need. This one I'm going to have to cut it down. So that probably won't be too long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go offline here for a second. I'm going to get that squared away. Basically what I'm going to do is just line it up, measure it up using my handy dandy board right here that's already pre-measured. Cut this in half with my knife, and we should be good to go. Alright, so I did measure my foam to 5 1/2 inches because that was the diameter of the wheel. However, when I did put this in the wheel and stuff it in there, I didn't take into account that there would be a gap. So I'm going to probably have to add another couple extra inches. Alright, so I've taken the opportunity to remeasure 5 1/2 inches of foam, just unfortunately with the circumference of the wheel and having the to go around, I was having about an inch to inch and a half gap where that'd be like a huge flat spot. So I went back, cut some bigger pieces of foam. I went for all or nothing, and we're at 7 inches of foam. So 7 inches long and 1 inch and a 1 inch cube. So see if that's enough. So it looks like it'll line up pretty good. And then with the tire squishing it, I mean, that's just going to add more rigidity. And I went 7 inches as well because, you know, that way then there'll be some pushback while this is in a circle. You know, it'll compress, but it'll also push back a little bit, which is what we're looking for. So let's just give this a shot. So I got my wheel here, got my hub. So I'm going to take the tire, very squishy tire, shove all this in here. And I know that my cutting isn't pretty, but you know what? It doesn't have to be. It's the inside of a tire. Who cares? So if anyone is watching this video going, hey bud, I could have cut that better than you, like, well then go ahead and do a better job. You know, this is the job I did. If you can do a better job, you do that. Alright, so I got the foam all smushed and squished up in there. And then let me turn my light on so maybe you can see a little better. So yeah, I do have my foam. I'm gonna shove it in there. Get the tire in the grooves of the wheel. So it all fits. Okay, clicking and clacking. Okay. So it feels pretty consistent all the way around. So we'll do a squish test. Let me, just give me a second. We're gonna do a squish test. I'll take one of the pegs from my workbench, and I'm gonna apply the same amount of pressure. So you can clearly see that the wheel here on the left is going down a lot further than the wheel on the right. Here with just the same amount of pressure, you can see that the tire completely deforms. But when I do the same thing here, no, we got pretty solid contact all around. The wheel will be able to move. If you come up an obstacle and your tire goes flat, the motor has to work just that much harder to get over stuff. And I've also noticed too, when I'm running the truck, it bounces. I think it's because of this. It might be because mine's missing a wheel. I don't know. The vehicle literally bounces down my sidewalk or down my street. So I'm hoping that this will do that. And if I put like a rock load in the back or some other weight in the back, of course, like a real truck, that would stabilize. But it was just odd to see this thing basically skipping down my sidewalk earlier today. So that's what I'm going to do for all 6 wheels, or all 6 tires, is I'm going to put foam in it. The other thing I am going to do, the wheels, I am going to paint. I'm going to paint the truck a different color. I want to try and get a camo going on. I've already camoed my my True Heroes AB115 shark plane to make it G.I. Joe worthy. So now I call it the G.I. Joe XC31. So I definitely want to make it look different from this. I don't want to be a one-trick show. So more to come on all of that. Okay, so maybe now that I got the tire situation somewhat figured out, now I'm going to be taking a look at trying to lock the diffs. The diffs are completely open because it's a toy. What do you expect? So I'm a first timer at this, so if I make any mistakes, guys, just be gentle down in the comments. So what I plan on doing too is replacing the leaf springs and putting high viscous silicone differential oil in the diff to really stiffen this up to make it a bit more climber worthy. So here are the leaf springs that I got. These were WL leaf springs. They fit other models that they have. They look very similar to the ones that are already on here. So I got enough of those for all of my suspensions. So I'm going to be swapping those out. And then the diff oil that I could get, again, because supplies are limited everywhere, was a Traxxas 1,000 weight diff oil. So we're going to see how that goes. And I do definitely got gloves. You definitely don't want to mess with oil without gloves. So what I did before I started camera roll was I undid the screws holding the leaf springs. It's only 2 screws because then it's bent around an axle type setup down here. And then I struggled to figure out how to undo the drive shaft from the differentials. I've never ever done this before, guys, so that's why I'm a novice. So the truck does come with this very teeny tiny Allen wrench, okay, and then that Allen wrench fits in this very teeny tiny hole, and then inside that teeny tiny hole is this very teeny tiny Allen wrench looking screw. So can't lose that. So you see I have my little purple bins here. This is how I keep everything separate. Now make sure nothing rolls around down here and gets lost on the floor. So once I had the differential screw out, I could separate the drive shaft from the differential. Then this just simply bends up and you can take that out. So right there is your whole differential. So I'm going to take off these here leaf springs. I'm going to get me my handy dandy little cup here and put my little screws in there. Okay, so I got all those off, and there are just a lot of screws holding this thing together. So those are my leaf springs. Keep my leaf spring stuff together, and my handy dandy little jar or little purple cup there. The key to this stuff, guys, if you've never done this before, again, I am new to this. So if this is obvious to everyone else, I apologize for being redundant, but it really is important to keep all this stuff separate. And where, you know, like my little workbench here, it's in a basement. If I lose a screw on the floor, I probably will never find it. So now my pumpkin, I'm going to take this off. Alright, so that's my pumpkin. So there's part of the diff. And of course, the part that we're going to want to put the oil in is in here. Alright, so yeah, we're definitely going to want to put on that sprocket there, we're definitely going to want to put some grease once we get the oil in there. So let's see if we can't take this apart. I can take apart the axle itself, and yet, yes, there are more screws, believe it or not, a ton more screws. So I have more parts that I need more bins for. So yep, I'm going to be using my bins here. Put that in there, and I'm going to get gloves on. I do happen to have gloves because this is going to get messy. All right, so yeah, there is a little bit of grease from the factory. Take that one off too. There's a little grease on from the factory on these gears. We're gonna schmutz it up as we're gonna put some grease on there to make sure that that's running really good. So here we go. We're gonna get some more. Oh, and more screws means more bins. I have so many bins, guys. I don't even know what's going on anymore. There's the planetary gear for the diff. The important thing to remember is with your diffs, you should always fill them completely to the top. So that's why originally I bought just one, but I didn't know if this would be enough. So I'm an all or nothing type. So I bought 2 whole bottles of this stuff just in case. Now this does come with a nozzle that I could put in there. It's a very teeny tiny, very itty bitty hole. That's going to take forever to fill that cavernous thing there. So I'm just going to dump it like this. This is viscous stuff. It is very viscous stuff. So that'll work its way on. Top it off. Let's have a look. See, I still got some spaces. Oops, autofocus. I still have some space over here. So just going to put a little bit more in. You guys, again, I am a novice to this. I typically do things the hard way. So that looks pretty full. Really have no way of topping that off. Just go a little bit more. Okay. Gotta line up my holes. Oop. Looks like I got a lot in there. So I'm going to get my screws back in there. Okay. Already it's a lot stiffer. It is not by any means like 100%. It's like there's definitely a lot more drag there. So that will definitely help in the bigger stuff. So we got that going on. We're gonna throw this bad boy right back in here. Oh, I need my, almost forgot my bushings over here. All right, so we got this back together. Oops, backwards. Again, guys, I've never done this, so I am winging it. I watched a bunch of videos online and now I'm winging it. This is here's front, so this is where I need that to be. So yeah, this is definitely a lot tighter than what it was. I'm trying to move it, barely move a little, whereas this is just with the same amount of force. Yeah, that's definitely, it's not 100%. It is definitely not 100%, but it is way better than what it was. This is taking a lot of time because there are, just in this, there's 8, 9, 10, 11, there's 12 screws with 2 more to go. So there's 16 screws just in one axle. not counting the screws holding the tires on. Okay guys, so I did make a mistake, and I'll be very open about my mistakes. I'm not going to try to hide it. I put the diff pack on backwards. So I had my 3 little marks, they ended up down here, so I just switched everything around just to make sure everything's proper and that this will run right. So next step now is to put my leaf springs back on. You know, they are almost there. We'll probably have to bend them a little bit, but they are not anywhere near as rigid, in fact, as the original. So if these don't work, they don't work, I'll just take them off. Like that. This is the tricky part. This is you have to get that started and kind of maybe even hand turn it just a little just to get it started, holding it in place with my thumb. Got a slightly bigger screwdriver so I had enough torque, because this is a longer screw. Okay, so we got everything apart. We put 100,000 weight diff oil in there. We now have some significant drag in the diff, which is awesome. That should help with some off-road. It's not 100% as I said, but it will definitely help. We got more compliant leaf springs in it, and again, this isn't a vehicle that's meant to carry a lot of weight. It's just meant to look good and maybe climb over some moderate rocks, so you'll have a little bit more travel. So I'm not worried about how springy and light these springs feel. They fit absolutely perfectly into the designated spot. You know, look, that's very springy. Look at that compliance you get. Look at the axle articulation we're going to get versus now. The same amount of force. It is really traveling. I would like to do a camo paint on that, something not entirely like my True Heroes AB115. Now I call it a Joe X130. I want to do a camo paint job and basically make it look like what I think a G.I. Joe toy might have looked like back in the 80s. So more on that, more to come.